You see the TikTok, the substitute teacher for Pajaro? That was gnarly. But I was like, she's getting fired, but she should probably move.
Yeah.
No, I know. Of all the districts, I know. I know. Like a racist road rage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really
We
gross.
on video. Yeah. Yeah, like,
They asked me, and everyone laughs. All the women in the office laughed when I said I didn't. And so then I had to Google it and find out. Oh yeah, I am always strategizing about how when we have a legion of war, we're gonna take over the county.
Okay, welcome to the Thursday, September 14th closed session. May we have a roll call?
Councilmember Brooks,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Peterson,
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown, and Mayor Kaiser.
Here. Any members of the public wish to speak on this closed agenda? No? Anybody online?
We don't have any participants with their hands raised.
Okay, we will adjourn to closed session and be back at 6. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the September 14th regular city council meeting. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brooks.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown.
Here.
And Mayor Kaiser.
Here. Would you all join in the Pledge of Allegiance? Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff changes to the agenda this evening.
All right. We have a presentation this evening for a mayor's proclamation. The proclamation is going out to Sterling Nathan Cross. The city of Capitola wishes to honor Sterling Nathan Cross for his significant impact on the community and contributions to education through his work in the Live Oak School District, UCSC's new Teacher Center, Educational Solutions, as well as his active role in the Begonia Festival and service on the Art and Cultural Commission. Nathan dedicated himself to education for 57 years, serving in various roles in the Santa Cruz County area. He also played a key role in commissioning the sea lion statue at the Esplanade Park in Capitola, we all know very well. After his retirement, Nathan continued his work in education by starting his own business, coaching school administrators, and supporting educational organizations. He was actively involved in fundraising efforts to help the Pajaro Valley Unified Schools recover from flood damage in the recent 2023 event. Nathan was a beloved member of the community and often assisted neighbors with industrial arts projects, earning the nickname the unofficial mayor of his neighborhood. He resided in Aptos and was a valuable member of the community and the greater Santa Cruz area from 1983 until his passing this June. Now, I therefore, Margot Kaiser, the mayor of Capitola, hereby recognize and remember Sterling Nathan Cross for his lifetime of service to the Capitola and the larger Santa Cruz County community. So thank you very much. And I can give anybody this proclamation that would like to receive it on his behalf. All right. And do we have a report on closed session?
Good evening. A closed session was held on the item on the agenda and no reportable action was taken.
Thank you. I'm like, don't know where to look for her. She's over there somewhere. And this evening, are there any additional materials?
Staff uploaded copies of the presentations for each of tonight's general items to the online agenda packet, a copy of which has been printed at the back of the room, and the council received a copy of these materials before tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And we can now go to oral communications by members of the public. These can be on any consent items or any items that are not listed on tonight's actual agenda. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Warren Klepich. I live here in Soquel, nearby Capitola. I shoot basketball every day at Gate Street Park. Today at 12:33, I made an emergency call because I saw a gang sign posted with paint on the restroom of the men's restroom that is facing Porter School and so Capitola Village. So it's not on the side of the community center, but on the other side that is facing Capitola Village. And I think it's a little bit, it's a shame that people are using the playground as a gang hood or something like that to intimidate people. When I see little kids play in the park with ball and they're socializing with each other and having instruction, elementary school instruction. I think this is more important to support than anything else. That's all what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for listening. God bless you all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Jerry Jensen. Just wanted to make sure everybody had a couple of save the dates that are coming up. On the 27th, the Britannia Arms is having a fundraising event for the Capital Wharf Enhancement Project, which is all day long. They'll be donating 50% of all their sales directly back to the Wharf Project, which is amazing. Those are also anything that is sold that night. So gift card, any merchandise, anything like that. So hopefully, if council's available or city staff or anybody in the public will come out and support great things that they're doing there. There's also an amazing raffle going on. You have 2 tickets to Hawaii, airfare for 2 to Cabo San Lucas. They have a 7-day trip to Honduras. The gifts are absolutely amazing that are being donated to them. And so hopefully we come out and as a community and support that event. And then also just a reminder with the Oktoberfest that's coming up on October 14th. That's also going to be benefiting the Capital Wharf Enhancement Project. And that's just kind of backing on to the great successful weekend that we had at the Art and Wine Festival this weekend. Other than the Chamber doing an amazing job again. CWEP had a booth down there. It was housed by a lot of our community members, and it was absolutely fabulous. And the community support was amazing. So thank you for your time. Have a great night.
Thank you. I bought my water bottle and my raffle ticket, so. Any other members of the public or anybody online?
There are no attendees with their hands raised, Mayor.
Okay, great. We can go to staff. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here this evening just to let everyone know that tomorrow is the gun buyback at the Sheriff's Department. And so tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Sheriff's Office, 5200 Soquel Avenue. With the city's donation of $5,000, the other jurisdictions came in and matched that. And then the County Chiefs Association had some money as well. So we have about $50,000 to purchase rifles and shotguns at $50, handguns at $100, and then the assault weapons. So we did this, I think, 2 or 3 years ago and ran out of money. So our goal, we also have staff that's dedicated to that tomorrow. So we're gonna have a couple officers there to help process the guns. And we're gonna have a couple of our records techs to also be there to help process everything. So spread the word. I have some brochures. I'll hand them out to the staff. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other staff comments? Any council comments?
Yeah, I'd like to ask staff to, on our Friday update, to let us know what's going on at Jade Street Park, what our speaker was referring to, if there's any cleanup necessary or the plan is for that. And then I also would like to acknowledge that our city manager was just sworn in as the vice chair for the operations
All right. So just an overview of the mall, a 46-acre site. Back in 2019, Malone Geyer Partners submitted an application for redevelopment of the mall. It was to redo the commercial, keep some of the commercial buildings, and there'd be a net loss of about 30,000 square feet of commercial. And then to add 637 new residential units. The mall redevelopment was going to be a new lifestyle community with a new Main Street, open air mall, great opportunity for shopping, dining, and entertainment. Cosmont Companies was hired to do a fiscal analysis of the mall at that time. There was a contract for $63,000, and they were doing the feasibility of the mall, the study for fiscal analysis, the impact on the city. And then in 2020, after due to the coronavirus, the mall applicant withdrew their application. This year during our budget meetings, there was a request to put $25,000 towards identifying strategies to support mall redevelopment and also to create a committee to focus on the mall redevelopment. So at this time, staff with this study that I'll be bringing up plans to form a technical committee made up of local experts that have experience with larger development projects and economic and planning background and housing as well. So next slide, please. So the scope of this project is to analyze our existing code to point out what areas are assisting the mall and what areas might be getting in the way of mall redevelopment. Then also to provide a menu of alternative land use tools for us to consider in the future. And it'll give us an overview of each tool, the pros and cons associated with the tool, examples of where these tools have been used in other places. And then the findings of this research will be presented to the technical committee, and they will, after that, make a recommendation to the city council of which tool they think would be best for us to implement in terms of mall redevelopment. So tonight I'm proposing a sole source contract with Cosmont Companies. We have a policy, an administrative policy regarding sole source in which we don't have to put it out for bid because of the knowledge base regarding a certain firm. And since Cosmont did so much work on the original proposal and has a really great understanding of the mall and the history there, we're proposing to utilize Cosmont Companies. And with that, the recommendation for this evening is to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Cosmont Companies for the Capitola Mall redevelopment in the amount of $25,000. So with that, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Okay, any public comment on this item? I don't see anybody here. Is there anybody online?
There are no speakers with their hands raised, Mayor.
Great, we can take it back to council.
Thank you to our council member for bringing this forward. I think it's a great idea. It definitely, most certainly picks up where we left off in 2020. I'd like for us to, in the scope, make sure that we add in the housing element outcomes. I think that's going to have a significant impact on what this study's outcomes may, or what the outcomes may, what will be presented as outcomes to us, because that could significantly change the scope of the entire project. So I'm guessing that we would align this group, this technical committee, with when we find out more on the housing element. It would not be in our favor to start and then have to start again based off of what the housing element are. And then also we worked with MBAP before on a white paper, and I'd like to make sure that we include that in the scope and with the work that we've already done, and bring that back and possibly invite an MBAP person to that committee. I think they're very helpful and in the know. But with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the thing. 1 second. Thank you. I'd like to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Cosmont Companies for the Capitola Mall redevelopment land use study in the amount of $25,000.
Second.
Great. Motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brooks,
Aye.
Councilmember Clark.
Aye.
Councilmember Peterson,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown,
Aye.
and Mayor Kaiser.
Aye, passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to item 9B. This is the City Hall needs assessment and alternatives analysis. Tonight, recommended action is to authorize the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Group 4 Architecture for Phase 1 of the City Hall Sites Needs Assessment and Alternatives Analysis Report in the amount of $49,950. We're back.
you. Well, I won't repeat what you just said, but tonight we're looking at a contract for the City Hall redevelopment. So we're all familiar with the site. It's comprised of the Capitola City Hall, the police station, our museum, our parking lots in the back. And it's a 7-acre site. The City Hall and police station are older buildings. This evening, while walking down the stairs to come to this meeting, I heard a little bit of a drip noise to the right of the stairs, and it seems like there's some water. So we've had ongoing experiences with the age of this building and just things that are happening, but it doesn't look like it's an emergency, but there, just the buildings are older, and so it's time to actually study what's going on and talk about the future. Next slide, please. Back in March, I came to we discussed this as a goal during our budget cycle and set aside $50,000 in this fiscal year. Look at options. So phase 1, this is what we're really talking about tonight. About launching. It will include a description of the structures and the site, an overview, and then visual assessment of the building where an architect will come out and look at the building and give us a visual assessment of the structure. Quantitative breakdown of the current uses. So looking at like the exact square footage of each type of use within City Hall, then look at the functionality of the building for its purpose and how whether or not those square footages fit within accepted practices within architecture and meeting space, and then a qualitative analysis also of the site and looking also at our environmental constraints. We all know this building is located in a floodplain. From that, they'll work with staff on a 20-year projection, which will talk about the future needs of the city and see what the spatial needs are as well. And then they'll provide a summary of the phase 2. I've brought this up before, but it's really looking at public outreach and also feasibility analysis of different scenarios. So I won't go too deep into that this evening. So we put out an RFP and it was out for about 2 months. And from that, we got 4 proposals. We chose Group 4 because of their prior experience. They've worked throughout the Bay Area on projects similar to this. They also, their pricing was the best of all the groups. The others, I would say, most of them came closer to 200,000. So big difference between this proposal and the others. And then their understanding of the scope, they've done this a lot. They really have worked within communities and had these public outreach processes in which trying to get community feedback and then come forth with different proposals. So it looks like a great team. And that's why they were selected. So for this evening, we're talking about phase 1, which came in just under $50,000. Phase 2 came in around $66,000. And after phase 1, if the findings, if we hear from the city council that you would like to move into phase 2 of looking at options, that's when we would come back to ask for more money in the budget in order to do that phase 2. And tonight, the recommended action is to authorize the city manager to execute a professional service agreement for the phase 1 of City Hall Sites Needs Analysis and Alternative Analysis Report in the amount of $49,950. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Questions?
One of the slides mentioned that the alternatives analysis will refer to sites. So does that mean they're going to look at this site and then also provide potential alternative sites other than just the one that we're currently on, or no?
That's a possibility that if they think that that would be, that's something we could look at within that. So it could be looking at alternative sites. There's, yeah, unless when we get to that stage, if we heard from the public and city council not to go there.
But that's part of phase two.
That's part of phase two. Okay, okay.
The phase two was like the goals for like, what is City Hall, what does it need to accomplish? And then looking into those different sites and what options might be out there for those.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
So Katie, when I'm looking at phase one, it seems like it's telling me what we already know. We know how big buildings are. We know we're in a flood zone. We know, based off of what council has already prioritized, which is we need to find a better place for City Hall. Tell me a little bit about how necessary it is to kind of evaluate those things in phase one and what's holding us back from just kind of moving this forward right into phase two with the community output, looking at different areas and really investing our dollars in a way that we can get a better outcome, because I feel like after reading phase one, it just seems like stuff we already know.
Yeah. So I think phase one is an important first step. But we do know a lot of this information, when we brought forth that we were putting out an RFP and that we've done past studies on this, we do have information on that. I think it's an important first step, but we do have a lot of this information. So, but it's essential when you go out to the public to really have a good summary of what is a snapshot of today. But what we're asking for from the consultant is pretty in-depth, having an architect come out, really look at the structure, give us feedback on that, and assess all of the numbers. But there is quite a bit of that information available already.
So is there anything in phase one that we don't need to ask group for? Are there elements that could potentially save us money in not having them assessed, since we already have completed multiple studies and have felt the water drip on our heads while we walk by? We have evidence here.
Yeah, I think, Julie, would you mind pulling up the slide on phase one? I think a lot of the information on exact square footages related to the building, the site, and a description of the site, those are things we have and we could put together as staff. I think it's still an important piece of this, but so probably number one, we wouldn't need the consultant to do necessarily, and that's also the overview. The visual assessment is something we could probably have our building official take a look at and give feedback on. And the quantitative breakdown, we know that we could pull together those square footages, and then also our environmental constraints and hazards. We know those pretty well.
So because that's staff time, if we were to remove those items from phase one, how much would that possibly save us? We asked group four not to do that. Any idea?
I'm sure they would work with us. I'm not quite sure on an amount. So
I'm just wondering if it's equivalent to staff time, or this is something, well, you rather have them do, because it's a lot of work, or is it something that staff can, handle and it saves us $10,000, $15,000?
The biggest thing about kind of the assessment of this facility, this building, is if we want to be comparing it against other alternatives, comparing the alternative, renovating the site. What does it take to renovate the site? I think the question is one for council is that going to be a really key piece of information for you to make decisions down the road? It's like, okay, hey, staying here, being on this site, maybe we could get us up to sort of a modern standard office for $10 million. Never going to get us out of the floodplain, but maybe we could do that versus picking up and moving somewhere else. So I think the question is the more analysis we do on the building, I think the better the handle we can get on what a potential renovation here would cost. But if we think that no amount of money that we spend is going to get this building out of the floodplain. And so in some ways, if everybody is willing to say, look, let's do some evaluation of the building, but let's know that at the end of the day, it's probably not worth rebuilding this thing. Then I think, really to your point, Councilwoman Brooks, it doesn't make sense to do too much like visual assessment of this building. So let me summarize. I think I talked in a circle there. I think we can do the analysis as proposed in phase one. But I think that if the council is pretty much at a point where you think that, look, this building doesn't make a lot of sense to invest money in as because of the floodplain, because of those issues, then I think there's some real obvious ways we could scale this back.
Can I also add?
Sure.
One item is that back in 2013, when we went out to the public with the study and information on what could be done, what we were hearing from the public is we didn't do enough homework up first with the assessment of the building. So that is why we have this piece in there now. But
Yeah, no, I mean, my questions are just based off of the necessity. We've done this, we've been here, we know we're in a flood zone, just like our city manager has said. We know what the implications are if we stay here. I think that's why we prioritize this, because we need to know what our other options outside of flood zone are. We had that conversation during priority. But if you feel that it's necessary, then I don't know, it's more cost savings to me. We've spent so much money already analyzing this problem, that if we're gonna save $10,000 to $15,000, those are programs and projects that we can use funds, in the meantime to fix the water drippage or something going on, in the meantime. So but I don't hear a number quite yet. And so I don't know so those are my questions. I'm sure we can have more conversation later, but that's why I was posing those questions.
I think the visual analysis would be one of the larger cuts from to have their architect come down and see the building and really get a grasp of the situation here. Because I think they were planning a full day to come down, look at the building, see what's happening. But if we were to take those steps out, I save probably what you're estimating, around 10, 15, but that's my guess at this point.
If we take that out, though, they can still do the rest of that scope, right? If they don't bring the person down to come look at the building, they can still do all of the other work.
Yeah, they can do like the square footage analysis of what our needs would be and what is typical within a building for, workspace and meeting space. Give us an idea of where our current snapshot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm noticing in the cost proposal that it says that they welcome the opportunity to review the fees and make adjustments to the scope and approach and align with our needs in our budget. So I think it sounds like there is an opportunity for us to kind of negotiate with them how much of what was on the slide that they do. And I was initially going to suggest that if we kind of bring down the scope of what they're doing in phase one, that perhaps we could get them to put some alternative sites in phase one rather than put that in phase two, just to get kind of an idea. But in looking at it again, I'm kind of seeing that the alternative sites, it's not just here's 3 sites and that's that. It's like, here's 3 sites and here's a site plan and here's a breakdown and here's what we'd recommend. So it's more than just here's alternatives. It's more detailed than that. So I will not suggest that, but I do suggest that staff work with group 4 on kind of negotiating the cost proposal for things that we don't need, to Councilwoman Brooks's point.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious. At what point, if we're changing the scope of what we're requesting, would we have to go out to bid again at any point?
So there's no hard and fast rule on that, I think. Actually,
Can-
I'd welcome of input from our city attorney if she had any input on it, but I don't think that there's a hard and fast rule. If we generally feel like we've described the project well in the RFP, and we get different proposals, and we ultimately elect to proceed with some elements of the proposal and not others, I think we're in fine shape there.
I agree.
Thank you. We can take this to public comment. Seeing no one here, do we have anybody online?
There are no speakers on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. We'll take this back to council for any other comments.
I'd like to interject here. Our police department does a great job. And if you look around other agencies the same size, their police department's about as big as our whole city hall. That's another thing to take into account. Hopefully they'll do studies to find out how big other departments are, kind of facilities they have, not just city hall in general, but for everybody.
That's including the scope, right?
Yes,
City Police Department, City Hall, museum, like everything on this property.
this property.
Oh, does it include parking?
And it's gonna look at the parking lots and how much space we have on the parking lot. But they're not going to do an analysis on,
Any kind of parking structures or anything?
they might in their scenarios.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
phase 2.
Parking spaces don't get any wider.
Maybe we should consider that. Okay, with that, I will make a motion to, let me go back to the phrasing. Authorize the city manager to execute a professional services agreement with Group 4 Architecture for Phase 1 of the City Hall Sites Needs Assessment and Alternatives Analysis Report in the amount of $49,950 with additional direction to negotiate scope based on what? Based on actual needs. Is that fair? What we can't do ourselves.
Yeah, I think
Is that,
to repeat, I think what I was hearing from the general discussion, it would be negotiating out some of the assessments of this building, putting a lot of time and effort into analyzing what's under the sheetrock in this building may not.
yeah, yes.
And I'll second that.
Great. First and a second, maybe we have a roll call.
Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Clark.
Aye.
Councilmember Peterson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown
Aye.
and Mayor Kaiser.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. This will take us on to 9C. We'll change presenters here. Public Works Director Khan. This is the pedestrian pathway from the Upper Beach and Village parking lot up to Monterey Avenue. The recommended action tonight is to direct staff to proceed with developing the final design of the pedestrian pathway from the Upper Beach and Village parking lot to Monterey Avenue, consistent with the pathway configuration alternative 3, as described in this staff report.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So just to get us a little bit oriented about where we're talking about, we are here at City Hall. The upper parking lot is above us. And so this is a pathway to take us from the upper lot to the corner of Bay/Monterey and Park Avenue. Next slide, please. Currently, there's not a pathway. This is the idea, is that we're trying to get from the end of the parking lot here up to the street. Next slide, please. Here's our problem issue. There's no walkway there. This, I'm sure if you drive up here in the summer, you see this quite often. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background on this project. It's been out there for a while. In 2021, the city went into agreement with the RTC for the study and construction of a pathway, and they committed funds to this project. It's to provide separations between vehicles and pedestrians, obviously. And also part of the reason they're interested is it provides access to segment 11 of the Coastal Rail Trail that will pick up at Monterey and Park Avenue intersection. The last time this came to council was February of 2022, where staff submitted a schematic plan, but really no details on the tree removals. And so council directed staff to return with the preliminary design minimizing impacts to the oak trees in that area. So with that, staff went back to the drawing board and made the following considerations when coming up with these alternatives. One was sidewalk width, one was drive aisle width, then the other was the retaining walls required for the project that would obviously scale the cost of the project. And then with the tree impacts, we considered the number of tree impacts, both removals and impacts to the root zone that might damage the tree for its lifespan. The species of trees involved, because there are a lot of coast live oak in that area. And then, like I said, the severity of the impact to the trees. Next slide. So we came up with 3 alternatives. The first alternative being the ideal for usability. So the widest sidewalk width and the widest drive aisle width. That has also had the most tree impact. So to reduce tree impact, we tried to shimmy around some of the more important, more prominent trees in the area. That was alternative 2 included in your packet. And while it did save some larger trees of note, it still had similar tree impacts. So the third alternative, which we're recommending this evening, reduces the sidewalk width by about 1/2 foot, reduces the drive aisle width to 2 10-foot lanes. There are currently 2 11-foot lanes. 10-foot lanes are pretty typical of a small residential street. And then the tree impact is reduced by quite a bit. So 4 to 7 trees with only 1 oak removed. Next slide. So here's the, rather than trying to go off by memory, the tree impacts here. So this was included in your packet. Red is known removals. Yellow is some that would have an impact. So either retaining wall or the sidewalk would impact the tree root area. And then green is no impact at all. And so you can see here that there's only 1 oak tree that we know would have to be removed. That would be the same under all 3 scenarios. And then the other 3 species of tree, or 3 trees we remove, are smaller other species of trees. Under the other 2 scenarios, there were definitely way more impacts and removals to the coast live oak. Next slide. So these are the trees that we're talking about. In scenario 3, the only tree to be removed is the 40-inch tree. In scenario 2, we were trying to shimmy around that 18 and 15-inch oaks that are there in the intersection. But like I said, going around there still impacted all the other trees down the line. So it really wasn't saving us the number of trees overall. Next slide. So this is alternative 3, just to walk you a little bit through this project. You have your curb cut there all the way on the left. Then the black and white kind of dash line on the bottom signifies a retaining wall. It would be approximately 2 feet tall for the duration of the project. There's 2 small trees there in that first section, and then next slide. And then the 1 large oak tree in the next section there. To achieve this configuration of the 5-foot sidewalk and 2 drive lanes, we're going to have to edit the curb cut there at the top left of the intersection to make a good acceptable turn radius for cars. Also included in this project are curb improvements to the lower left that connect back up to the existing sidewalk, and then the lower right to make it current ADA accessible standards. Next slide. Also included in this project when it was first envisioned was to redo this area. There used to be a bus stop here. There's no longer a bus stop here. However, this area is pretty unimproved. It's a dirt lot. There's a crumbling asphalt kind of curb there. So this project still proposes to have a concrete curb here to kind of shore off that area, keep the pavement from crumbling on the end, plant a couple trees there with the tree replacements we have to do for this project, and then also turn this into a loading zone area for people to drop off and pick up passengers, either for the rail trail or going down to the village on the busier days so you don't have to drive all the way down there. Next slide. This is our tree replanting plan. There's space here in the lower lot for about 28 trees. We only anticipate having to remove 4 trees, so 2 to 1 would be 8 trees in this area, so there are plenty of room. There's also multiple species here. You may or may not know that it is very hard to procure trees right now. So we have multiple species to choose from as approved by an arborist that we had come assess both this area and then the trees to remove. Next slide. So upon council's recommendation, we would return to council to authorize the bid and then also approve the final plan specifications estimate and the coastal development permit for the tree removal, with the aim of constructing this before next summer, so late winter to spring of next year. There's currently $300,000 budgeted for this project. The RTC grant and general fund that has already been dedicated to this project. We've expended about $30,000 on planning efforts in coordination with the RTC and anticipate the remaining funding to be sufficient to construct the project. And there's the recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any council questions?
I had one question. In Plan 3, the size of the sidewalk, is there a standard? Or is there between 1, 2, and 3, size of the sidewalk?
So 1 and 2 had a 5.5 foot and 3 has a 5 foot. The ADA standard is only 36 inches. So it far exceeds the ADA standard. We like to do 5.5 because that's considered enough width for like 2 wheelchairs to be passing each other at the same time. But 5 foot is pretty much what you'll see around town because for a very long time, that was the standard around the state.
In the area that you highlighted where a total planting 28 trees, are you only planning on doing the 2-to-1 replacement, so 8 total trees at this time, or is there plans for more trees than that?
The intention is to replace them 2-to-1 in this, in one of these areas.
That generally what Capitola does.
For removals, yes.
Is there any specifics on the size of the trees that you'll be replacing the trees with?
That's a great question. I'm not sure what the standard is.
Very often staff will give a standard.
Our replanting is 2-to-1 and it's a 5-gallon tree.
And
For commercial, we require a larger replanting. But
could we
this,
have larger replanting for this project?
we have, we could look at the budget. We have quite a bit of money in our planting fund right now that we could most likely utilize larger trees than the 5-gallon.
I mean, I'd be happy with 3-to-1 too, if there's room for 28. And then my other question is, are the trees getting replaced of the same species? Are they oak? Or are they 1-to-1 given the species being removed?
Ideally, we'd want to replace them with coastal live oak, which are the ones being removed, especially the 40-inch ones of coastal live oak.
There was only one.
Oh, there's
the
one
one
live
oak.
oak. The other 3 are other species. Ideally, we replace them all with oak trees.
With oaks, great, okay.
Depending on availability, because it has been hard to procure trees here lately.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where? Prefer larger and.
I just had a question. I saw sort of some of the crosswalk or like bike path enhancement. Is that going to be tacked on to this project as well? Okay, cool. Thank you. Any other questions? Any public comment? Online?
There are no speakers on.
Okay, we can come back to council. Any other deliberation? Comments?
I see on, well, I see it says alternative 2, but which one were we going with? 3, I don't see an image of that in the slide. Oh, here it is. Okay. So yeah, it's the same. I was just curious about the crosswalks because I see it looks very robust at the bottom. But then I don't see any other like green or crosswalk marking on the other 3 for crossings.
Right, so that one. Actually, Julia, would you mind putting up? Slide? Slide. The one that shows the intersection, the plans with the intersection of. Monterey. Yep, there you go. Okay, so the top there is a standard marking for, we have a Shero, we have the marking for the bike crossing there. I think the one you're talking about is the one on the bottom. So there's a dual crossing there because we anticipate the rail trail being one of the entrances being there. And rather to have people who are biking kind of like dart out at random across the street to go down the hill into the village, we kind of want to guide them into a lane to safely cross the road, and also for cars to expect bikes to be crossing that way to safely then go down into the village. So that's why there's two-way marking there, and it's a little more visible. So drivers and bikes know that that's what's supposed to be happening in that intersection.
Okay, and the other 3 are just gonna be like stripes without any green.
Correct.
Okay, and is there any possibility of flashing lights? That there?
So typically you can't, or all the time, you can't put flashing lights in intersections, stop controlled intersections.
Would we do that green paint on the bottom there before the rail trail is put in? It seems like that could be potentially confusing.
Agreed. Likely not. And that project will, yeah. So we probably hold off on that until that project's actually constructed.
But maybe include the green on the top.
Correct. Yes, the other stand. Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I would like to move to make a motion for the pedestrian pathway from Upper Beach and Village Beach parking lot to Monterey Ave.
I'll second that.
And just to clarify, we're
Phase 3.
alternative number 3.
Phase 3.
Okay. Maybe we have a roll call, please. Okay.
Councilmember Brooks,
Hi.
Councilmember Clark.
Aye.
Councilmember Peterson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown
Hi.
and Mayor Kaiser.
Aye, passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to 9D. This is our long-term strategic planning. We'll provide feedback regarding the development process for longer-term city Capitola strategic plan.
Thank you so much. I'll just give it a second here. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to adjust this. Yes, so we'll be talking about long-term strategic planning. And we're here this evening because in the March budget goals and priorities meeting, you did direct staff to develop strategic goals for our city and allocate money towards that project. So what is a strategic plan? Well, it's very exciting. You'll hear this a lot. It is a roadmap for the future that is often used to prioritize an organization's or city's initiatives, goals, and resources. So this is really about the big picture. Where do you want the city to go? And is often summarized into about 5 or 6 focus areas that also align with the city's vision and mission. Next slide. Thank you. So this is just a visual example of several plans with staff analyzed and read. Many of our neighboring jurisdictions have strategic plans in place, such as the county. The top one is from the town of Los Gatos and the city of Watsonville. This is just kind of a visual. So moving forward, as I mentioned, we did look at many examples from jurisdictions, both larger and more similar in size to the city of Capitola. And what we really kind of concluded is often the process is very similar, but the scope and the scale of that process changes really based on the size of the community and that community's resources. So for example, the County of Santa Cruz strategic plan is in place currently, the 5-year plan, and was really the sole project of their assistant county administrative officer. Most of her time was dedicated to developing that plan in 2018, with also the help of an entire steering committee, several other staff members, extensive community outreach, which you can imagine makes sense because it was for the entire county. Looking at another example that was included in the packet for the City of King City, again, they followed a similar process, but on a smaller scale. And the focus areas that I mentioned earlier are listed here for each of those plans that were also included in the packet. Perfect. So what does that process actually look like? I've kind of outlined it here. We would start with fact finding. That would be a citywide needs assessment and analysis. Then move forward into public outreach with a series of workshops or surveys or both, really gathering that information and data and using it to identify what are those proposed goals, what are the focus areas of the strategic plan, and then bringing that information to yourselves where we could really focus on what is your vision and are we moving in the right direction based on the input we've received, from the community and from staff with that needs assessment. That would lead to drafting the plan and allow for fine tuning where the proposed plan would be given to council for review and lead hopefully to its final adoption at a council meeting. So I think, yep, I had some cool animation there. We've identified the different steps we would recommend would be done in partnership with a consultant, really leaning on an expert to get some of the work done and also really guide us in this process. And then, of course, also council's time would be very important to the process as well. So moving forward, to kind of reiterate some of the considerations to look forward to in this process is it wouldn't necessarily only be the city manager department. It will really lean on all the city departments to give their feedback and their buy-in. We would be looking for community input, leaning into transparency, having the process available and the outcome. We would need council time as well for some of that visioning. And then, of course, I know I've already mentioned staff time, but then I also want to just say the follow through once we have that adopted plan, really focusing on how we use it and that we are leaning on the plan in all of our future decision making. Otherwise, why do we have it in the first place, right? So just kind of bringing that up now. And that's really all I have now. I'm looking to you for feedback regarding our process in the development of a strategic plan, and I can answer questions as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe. Do we have questions?
Chloe, remind me, is this what we did with the Nicoles with the Optimal Solutions?
So that's a great question. I think it's very similar, but that was very specific to just the community grant program, correct?
Gotcha.
So it was kind of, and I think our recreation division also did kind of like a strategic planning program, but it was for that division specifically. This would be for the whole city.
You might have said this already, or it's probably in the report, but can you tell me again when the last time we did this was?
That should have been in my report. We never have.
Never. Okay.
We think about it all the time.
Think about it. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry, I got sidetracked by the joke there. I value the importance of strategic plans. I've done several strategic plans before. I do also have concerns that if we have a 5 or 10-year strategic plan, that every 2 years when we get a new council member and they come in and go, I care about this, the answer will be, sorry, that's not in our strategic plan. And so I do see within here that some cities have kind of a 1 or 2 year operational plan in addition to or enveloped within a strategic plan. Is that something that we would consider during our workshops, or is that something that staff would bring back to us? I just want to ensure that future councils aren't prohibited from being able to set goals themselves as well?
I think that's a really good point, and I see Jamie getting ready for a response. I do believe if you were to direct us to include kind of a smaller scale operational plan, that we would absolutely be able to do that, and that would address some of your concerns.
Okay, so if this council were to create 5, 7, 8, 10, whatever year strategic plan, but then within that was a 2-year operational plan, then the next time the council changes over, new people would have an opportunity to weigh in on the operational plan, if not the strategic. plan.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I would just say to that, that I think it would be important to build into the language of the plan that it should be a living document and should be open to change through new city council members, but just to serve as, we have this massive plan that we've been working on and refining over the years, and, things change and people's opinions change, but I think it's good to have that still. Additionally, I had a question about the, I see here it says, city council half-day workshop. I'm wondering if that is, standard from your research, or if the consultant might have opinions for that, like, to what degree city council is involved in the strategic planning.
I think it depends on the scope. I believe, for example, with the county, there was, I think, even a longer, it might have been a full day offsite retreat, multiple workshops. So again, though, was for the county, that's a larger scope. We would certainly be able to, with the help of the consultant, identify a balance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
And I think what we were trying to do is come up with kind of a middle of the road approach, not go as intense as the county did, but at the same time, do something that's a little bit more robust, because we haven't done a strategic planning effort in basically as long as this generation of leadership has been around the city. So trying to find that middle ground, there are some jurisdictions that would allocate, 2 all-day sessions for a workshop. Other times, people might just do it as something as part of a regular evening meeting. So we were kind of thinking that middle ground of a half-day workshop, but we're happy to get input from council or from the consultants and see if we want to go deeper or not so deep.
Any other questions? Okay. Any public comment on this item? Anybody online?
There are no speakers on Zoom.
Okay. We can take this back to council for comments.
One comment I would have is definitely a living document that things are always going to change in our community. So we can make changes as we and when new council members come aboard.
Yeah, I guess along those lines, and maybe this should have been more of a question, but we're coming off of a huge catastrophic event that was not able to be planned for. So as much as we can have strategies and ideas in place, I think coming off of what Vice Mayor said too, is I don't want to pigeonhole anybody that comes after us to do certain things, especially or be held back by fixing things or doing things after something catastrophic ever happens again. That's just kind of my feeling towards this.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And just as a brief example, when speaking with the people from the county who prepared that plan through 2024, one of the the CZU fires happened within that time frame, and there was a lot of response and also shifting because of that event that happened, and that was completely doable. Of course, a challenge for other reasons, but was not hindered by the plan. So if that kind of eases your mind.
And just to echo what I'm hearing from my fellow council members is, it's important for the strategic plan to have that operations element, so it aligns with our annual goals that we set as council members. I think it would take away if we didn't do that. I think a component that's going to be really important about the strategic plan, and I'm sure during our 5-day event when we're talking about it in Hawaii, that I think we really need to ensure that we bring in a regional component to the strategic plan. We're hearing that the county already did it. And we know the city of Santa Cruz has done it. There's no sense of not ensuring that whatever they've created is also part of our plan because we're part of an entire county, right? And a lot of those things are intertwined. And then lastly, we just came back from the Central Coast Community Power annual meeting, and they had a really unique format for their budget and their operations that was just in a really community friendly form where, you know, during our strategic plan, it might be like 1,000 pages. And instead they had it in like a 15, 20 page document that was, that did go out to just not us, but to everybody and consumers. I think we should think about that as a tool for us in our, for our community to be able to access that and really, so they can have an idea on what we do. So those are just my thoughts, and I'd be happy to move the recommended action of providing, oh, I gave you feedback. That's all I need to do.
Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it.
Is there any other feedback?
I guess that I would err on the side of a longer term strategic plan. You know, I think it would be more valuable to have a 10-year than 2-year, for example.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's something that I'd like to work with our consultant on how to structure something like that. And I'm kind of imagining sort of a plan that starts out with pretty high level principles and kind of our focus and our and then gets more into it. And so there's like the more granular stuff might be refreshed every couple of years, but the higher level stuff stays static. I don't know. Just, I think you're right. I think you do want to have a picture for where you want to end up and what that desired condition would be. But then you want to talk pragmatically.
Plan, even if we do make a 10-year plan, those very high level 10-year plans can still be changed by future council members, and that's an important aspect of it.
And then is this something that would be visited every year? Or like what, or is that what we're kind of trying to figure out? It would almost be like another form of like a budget meeting.
So my vision, which may or may not matter, is that the operational plan would be revisited more frequently because that would be moderating a shorter length of time, and that maybe we would restructure how the budget principles and goals meeting is conducted so that it's kind of slightly higher level and it fits into this entire process. And that's something we could talk to the consultant about, how to achieve that as we're addressing this, you know, making this strategic plan work. So I hope that answers your question.
Or maybe even as more, when new council members come aboard every 2 years.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is that enough?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Great.
Thank you, Chloe. All right, so we can take it to 9E. This is the item about the interim building official. We are recommended to adopt a resolution for an exception to the 180-day wait period per government code listed there and approve the appointment of Robin Woodman as the interim building official, retired Nuent.
Yes, so it's me still. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a quick item. We are excited to welcome Robin as our interim retired annuitant, our interim building official, while the city does recruit for an actual employee to fill that role. This is a really good win-win way to address not having a building official employee at this time, while also opening it up and looking for someone to fill that role at some point within the next year. So you may remember there are very specific rules to appoint retired annuitants. they need to work less than 960 hours in a fiscal year. They're paid only an hourly rate with no other additional benefits from the city. And in this case, under this section of code 21221H, this is a situation where we're having Robin serve as an interim building official. So that role specifically, as we do recruit, and we do have an open recruitment for an employee in that role. So the reason we're having you adopt a resolution during general government is a CalPERS requirement that she will be starting prior to the 180-day wait period, which is generally required for retirees. In this case, this is necessary to fill a critically needed position, which is within the bounds of the CalPERS rules. So my recommendation is please adopt the resolution for the exception as written here on the screen. And thank you. If you have questions, I'm here to answer them.
Any questions? Any public comment? Anybody out there?
There's no one on Zoom.
Okay. Take it back to council.
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
Great. First and a second, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brooks, Councilmember Clark.
Aye.
Councilmember Peterson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brown
Aye.
and Mayor Kaiser.
Hi, thank you so much. And 9F. City council appointments to city advisory bodies. The recommended action is to appoint members of the public to the Capitola Arts and Cultural Commission. I believe this is Julia.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. To close us out this evening, we have a quick appointment to our Art and Cultural Commission. So per Government Code 54974, the city clerk's office received notice of an unscheduled vacancy because a member of the commission resigned from their position. We recruited for the vacancy by publishing a notice in the newspaper, as well as on our social media website, and requesting word of mouth. We received 3 applications. We currently actually have 2 unscheduled vacancies for the commission. However, one of them is for an artist position, and none of the applications on file meet the requirements to fill that vacancy. So in accordance with the bylaws of the Art and Cultural Commission, the commission reviewed the applicants and recommends the appointment of Mario Beltramo. This would be for a term expiring in December of 2024. With that, the recommended action is that the city council appoint 1 member of the public to the Art and Cultural Commission. I'm available for any questions.
I have a question. The agenda report mentions the COE received 1 application for a youth member appointment. Was that a typo? Or is that just for informational purposes?
It is for informational purposes. That appointment will be coming to you at the next city council meeting because the COE still has to review that application in accordance with their bylaws. So it's just a random fun add-in
Happy
for
to
your
hear it.
knowledge.
Happy to hear it. Okay.
But it's not factually incorrect.
No, it's not.
And then is there any insight as to the decision-making? I don't question the choices of the commission. They know who is best for their commission, but I'm wondering if there was any insight as to how the decision was made. Only because I noticed that one of the applicants works specifically with the arts, the performing arts community. And it looks like the person that was chosen is not related in that way. I don't know these people, so I'm not passing any judgment, but I'm just curious as if there's any insight as to the decision making.
So the Art and Cultural Commission reviewed the applications during an open Brown Act meeting. So members of the public had an opportunity to comment. Each of the applicants was invited to attend the meeting. It's actually in the bylaws that they're required to attend 1 meeting prior to being appointed. As for specific insight, I believe that our staff liaison for the commission is present at tonight's meeting. Nikki could probably speak to it further. Or our council representative who may have been in attendance that night as well.
Yeah, I'll talk on this. That we did have a chance to meet with everybody, and informal interviewing of them and listening to all their experiences. He was our next choice. So Mario was our next choice. Although we want to bring them all on eventually, this is where we stand with Mario.
That works for me. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
A question. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I didn't really understand that there were 2 unscheduled vacancies, but why could only one be appointed?
So we received 2 resignations from the commission. We have applications on file, but one of the vacancies is tied to an occupation as an artist. So the person who fills that vacancy needs to be a working artist essentially. And so we contacted the applicants on file to see if any of them could perhaps fill that requirement, and none of them responded in the affirmative that they could. Typically on the application, there's a checkbox. When you submit your application, you can select which type of vacancy you're applying for. Like for example, with the Finance Advisory Committee, there are business representatives as well as at-large members. With the Art and Cultural Committee, there are at-large members, and then there are also artist members. And so none of the applicants on file are able to meet that requirement for that vacancy.
And for the artist requirement, does that need to be like your primary source of income? Is that what it is, or what's the definition of artist?
I don't believe it has to be the primary source of income. I would need to review the bylaws to be 100% certain, but I do believe it needs to be like profession. They need to have an artist as a profession, not their primary source of income, but they need to be working and producing art for sale, I believe.
Right, and nobody else qualified.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So any artists out there? Time to apply.
We do accept applications year round.
Any public comment on this item? Anybody online?
There are no speakers with their hands raised.
You can come back to council.
I'll move approval of the commission recommendation,
I'll second.
appointment to the commission. Mario. Beltramo.
Great. The first and a second. Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Oh, great. Okay, that takes us to our very last item, which is number 10, adjournment. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. Have a great evening and a good weekend.
Art and wine would have been a.
Yeah.
Art and wine would have been a great time to recruit.
Wait. Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
No.
Why did you change this last one?
You only have to do a roll call vote if the council member is online.